welcome to Movie Friends. My name is Seth. The path to becoming a filmmaker is not often a straight road. Sometimes it can be as simple as going to film school, working on some projects, and getting lucky. Sometimes you write a screenplay that gets picked up. Other times, you find yourself alone in a foreign city, not sure what to do next, because the subject that you traveled over 1,000 miles to film has been rushed to the hospital. Our guest today is CJ Wallace. He's a filmmaker, an animator, and a Vancouver native that has spent the last few decades working hard at what he loves. His music videos have seen him work with Currency, Wiz Khalifa, and Ron Sexsmith, among many others. We recently covered his documentary, Perfect Bid, The Contestant Who Knew Too Much. It's a look at the game show The Price is Right and one very devoted math whiz of a fan, Ted Slauson. And we were so taken with the story of making that documentary that we reached out to see if he would speak with us. And he did. Obviously, or this would be a weird way to start an episode. This is our interview with CJ Wallace, and we hope you enjoy it. We just covered your movie Perfect Bid on the show.
Yeah. We love Ted.
Ted for the win.
Yeah.
Yes. Generally on the show, one of us will bring a movie and they'll do the research. And so for Perfect Bid, I didn't do any research. I watched it, took my notes, and then we go into it. And Michelle just unloaded on me all of these behind the scene facts, and not just about Perfect Bid, but about like you and your career. And I was like, this makes the story so much better. This makes the movie so much better. For a while, we were like on this big CJ Wallace kick.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
quite an obsession. Yeah, I heard your interview on the Black with No Cream podcast.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it was just a great conversation. And I was just like, wow, this dude is so cool. And I couldn't wait to share with Seth, everything you've worked on, but the making of Perfect Bid, which is so fun. We loved watching it, but then learning the behind the scenes of it and learning more about you, we were like, oh my gosh, this just like raised the bar for us.
Oh, cool.
So are you in Canada now?
No, I'm in LA, right near Groman's, right in the middle of the circus.
Oh, wow, he's out.
The loony bin.
Are you guys dying of the heat out there like we are here in New York?
No, it's actually, I lived in Vancouver forever, and now ever since I've been in LA, the weather's been more like Vancouver than LA.
Oh, wow.
It's usually pretty 3 layers for the most part, but we don't get out, I guess, during the height part of the afternoon, so it might be awful during then, but it certainly hasn't. I used to drive down here all the time, just from 18 until whatever age, and it was just as soon as I got here, I was sweating and it was hot and unbearable. And then after living in New Orleans, maybe that ruined me, because now LA is kind of cold, and I have like 3 layers on, and I used to live in Canada with a T-shirt in -degree weather, so I screwed myself up somewhere along the way.
Your body can't regulate.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I actually thought about that. Just looking into, you grew up in Vancouver, playing a lot of hockey, and then you decide to work in New Orleans, which is like the hottest, stickiest place maybe in the country.
Definitely, and I can be in the sun. I'm translucent. My skin is a shade of aqua. So being in New Orleans, it was a nightmare. It was like you get up at 6 o'clock and it would feel like, midday, and you just knew that you were destroyed. And by 1 o'clock you were toast and going to be disgusting. But at least you're an editor. You can hide in your gross little cave, and most people don't bother you unless they need something.
Right. That's right.
Which happens a lot in rap.
So you're born in Vancouver, or like the area? Where exactly are you from?
It's Cloverdale, BC, which is like 1,000-person place. We're famous for a rodeo from like 1880 or something. They had a bunch of pigs or did something. Who knows? But all growing up, at a certain time for a week, there was this rodeo that was half dangerous, half family fun, depending on what time of the day you went. So that was like our claim to fame, that this little town had this scary rodeo. But yeah, then I moved to Vancouver as soon as humanly possible. I think at 17, I got out of there. I wasn't built for that world.
Did you move out on your own?
Yep. Yeah. I'm an only child. That's not a problem. I'm very good at being isolated. It lends itself to animation and editing and doing all this stuff.
Yeah. You fill your time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
that's part of, as we were kind of looking into, your career, we're big lovers of people who do things themselves or are perhaps working like at uh their own works in their own ways. And it's quite unusual, as I'm sure you are well aware, for someone to do like the amount of stuff that you do on your films. And you brought up animation. What kind of came first? Were you interested in animating, or did you have to learn how to do that to like finish out your work?
I've always studied animation. My aunt and my mom would get me like Disney when they had The Lion King or Aladdin or any of these things that came out. They would put out these $200 books that had all the character design artwork and like
Mm.
really nice high res stills and just sort of like the making of the movies from like the animators point of view and all their notes and scribbles and all that stuff. And those were my favorite things. And
Wow.
I drew pencil crayons and pencils growing up and stuff like that. And I guess just it's, I don't know, one thing leads to another, leads to another. It's like for Perfect Bid, we don't have a budget, we have my budget. So if the fastest way to raise production value of something that has no production value is to throw animation into it. So
Right.
you just spend a week or two doing a little bit of that, and then you can do that, and then you reach out to artists that you like and trick them with animation stuff, and they become their friends, and it leads to other work.
That's the best way to make friends, I have found, is to trick people.
Definitely. I mean, it's true. It's everything that I've gotten so far with career or connections or whatever. I've always worked for free or offered something first for free, and not in any manipulative way. Just it's the easiest way to get in the door. It's
Wow.
you can have nothing on your resume and keep holding out for some phantom quote of an amount that you think you're deserved. Everything I ever got, I did for free first.
Wow.
And then it just turned into whatever experience. With Jet Life, it was all free first, and then I went on a tour with them, and that led to working with them and led to thousands of other opportunities and various things. And it all came from doing one free mixtape cover, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that, and it blows my mind. Like you have nothing else to do if you're sitting around at night anyways. Why not do an album cover for free for somebody that you like and post it online? You're going to get some other kids that wants you to do their cover. You make your money there, or I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know younger people, I think, than us, rightfully so. They want their work to be valued, and they don't want to just work for exposure. But there is a lot to be said for putting yourself out there, and like you said, you're sitting around anyway.
Right.
That's my philosophy with a lot of things I'm doing. It's like, hey, I could either be watching a movie or helping someone make one, or
Right. And it might be that nerd mentality of like, if I don't throw the party, I'm not going to get invited. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's a lot of that. You just sort of insert yourself into situations and make yourself, invaluable or whatever the right word is, and
Sure,
then ingratiate yourself, and then you get way too much work, and then you complain that you're busy. But it's all
Yeah.
your own fault.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start just showing up at Martin Scorsese's door every day.
There
Yeah,
you go.
absolutely.
Being like, you need something for free?
You better do it quick.
Well, yeah.
Get moving.
So you grow up in Vancouver and you're playing a lot of hockey. I know you said that you're interested in animation from Disney. At any point, are you thinking to yourself, this is what I want to do, or this is what I could do, like as a younger person?
Yeah, I definitely thought that animation would be cool, but it was definitely getting into filmmaking that made me quit hockey. First, the Kubrick and Scorsese, and obviously this guy is not the person to name drop at this point, but people like Harvey Weinstein in the 90s that sort of had this marketing angle of tricking you to think that all you had to do was write a script and the world was your oyster.
Right.
So I'm sure there's other examples. You can edit them in. But the fact of the matter was, for a lot of us, Miramax was the company that made you think that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck just walked in off the Dunkin' Donuts lot with a script, and look at them, they're on the cover of everything, and it's it was a 10-year battle for them, and they had to keep rewriting their script and doing all these things. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was definitely movies, but again, it's the same thing. It's if you can do all of these things and you have all these interests, luckily movies can facilitate all that. I often have the poster or the marketing idea or something like that for the movie before the movie.
Right.
So it all sort of comes together. Once you're bored of writing, you get to shoot a movie, and once you hate shooting, you get to edit it, and then you get to market it, and then you're back to the writing bit. So it's a nice little cycle to live in. And then within that, you get to just sort of bounce around people's worlds. You get to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback for 4 years. Or you get to be the greatest Price is Right guy for 4 years or whatever it is. You get to live all these little lives for a little bit of time and disrupt 40 years of game show history.
Right. Yes.
Along the way by accident.
In reading as much as I possibly could about you on the internet, which there's a lot, you've done an incredible amount of music videos and the documentaries and all this stuff. So I was trying to submerge myself in the CJ Wallace world. But one thing that came up was that you had submitted for Conan O'Brien as a teenager. So what was that kind of experience like?
It was just a thing of playing hockey. Like when we say we play hockey in Canada, it's like a legal thing. Like as soon as you're born, they cut the umbilical cord and like see if you can glide for X amount of time. And if you fall over by the red line, they put you in pro sports. So it was like hockey is all the time. When there wasn't school, it was hockey. So as I was slowly starting to have this dirty mistress of film behind my parents' back and television, these things, it just late night shows like David Letterman and Conan O'Brien, and they fascinated me for whatever reason. But I couldn't stay up that late because practice was at 3 a.m. and then school and on and on.
No way.
So I would just tape all these shows, and my parents would go to Costco and buy these 20 packs of VHS tapes for no reason. So within a week, I had filled them up with X-Files and Conan O'Brien things. But these type of shows, they sort of have a format, and they probably don't like hearing this, but the longer you watch it, these jokes at the time became sort of predictable. As soon as you sort of heard the first 3 or 4 lines, I could get to the point where I could finish their punchline. And even if they took a left turn, you could sort of tell when they were going to do that.
Wow.
So I just, I have X amount of time in between hockey practice. So I just started writing jokes that were similar. And it was a very primitive website. And it had some sort of, I don't remember if it was for internships or it was just some sort of thing on a little sidebar that said to contact the show. So I wrote this thing and sent them a package, and they contacted us and flew us out there, and chaos ensued.
How old were you when you did this?
17.
Around? 17.
Yeah.
And at that time, you're doing it and you're just like, yeah, I got nothing to lose. Like when you're 17, you're like, yeah, I could do this.
Yeah. And it just must be the only child thing of just like, it's just like, of course, I'm going to send the package and this is how it goes. And it's the first stage of you're planning this whole delusion in your head.
Yes.
But it worked the first time. So then the delusions get bigger and bigger, I suppose.
Wow.
Yeah.
They had just finished doing the 5th anniversary special, and I just always collected stuff. So I have all through high school. So I have like a ridiculous X-Files collection, and Conan O'Brien. I would buy stuff off eBay. They put up like do not sell these screeners where they'd submit them to the Emmys, and I would buy and collect all those things. So I just went to the show, and it was all new, and they had this big blow up of Conan from the Rolling Stone article with his big like Astro Boy haircut that was on the wall, and I'm just sitting in front of it watching Andy Richter complain that the fax machine wouldn't work, and Max Weinberg's walking by, and like he should be drumming for Bruce Springsteen somewhere, but he's just sitting in an office trying to make small talk with my mom. So it's just very surreal. And then the producer guy came out and he just sort of like looked around the room for a little bit. I'm 5'7" right now, so who knows what I was at 17.
Sure.
So the look on his face, I probably won't forget. when he saw me sitting there. So then we went to the office and he asked me a few questions, just sort of like, so what'd you think of the 5th anniversary special? Like sort of looking around the room, like not, realizing they had made some sort of mistake. And we just had a very awkward interview. And then he was like, on the way out, he's just like, yeah, we don't really hire high school students. And I was just sort of like in my head, like, yeah, I wouldn't imagine that you would. But here we are. I thought, Conan was this young writer, prodigy guy. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe I accidentally did it.
Right.
So anyways, he just said, call us back when you get in college. And I was like, I'm not going to college. I'm going to be a Stanley Kubrick tomorrow. You guys are missing out.
Right.
Yeah.
Al Green was the musical guest, and the director Todd Solondz, who makes these really weird films that haven't aged necessarily well, I suppose, in this climate that we live in now. Happiness and
absolutely.
Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Love Todd Solondz.
Yeah, and actually we had Heather Mazzarato. We brought her out to our second film, The Fiddling Horse. She came out for a day. So that's that whole movie. Every movie that you bring up, we always say the most interesting drama is the one that didn't happen on screen, unfortunately. So we always have a lot of interesting stories. Certainly, Perfect Bid, and right now we're trying to finish up the Jim McMahon movie, and the recuts on Perfect Bid I thought were a nightmare. It was just a rehearsal for this.
Oh God.
But yeah, we're having fun. What else are you going to do in life? It's this is what it is. You're living in the good old days now, so you got to enjoy every minute of it.
That's right. That's
well
right.
Said. Well said.
And you could be doing, as much of a nightmare as recutting it is. Hey, you could be doing something that's a bit much bigger nightmare.
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting how. One guy and Mallory here in a room can upset and bother so many people just by trying to make these movies. But it turns out here we are.
It can be done.
Yeah.
So my next question for you is about October 2012. You're robbed and you lose all of your projects up until that point.
Yep. That's the fun part about being on tour with a rap group is you have to promote when you're not going to be at your house.
Yeah.
Right.
So it becomes an easy target. And when the house is often on Instagram with rappers showing how much things that they have, again, it makes it an easy target. So, somebody that knew us picked his spot and cleaned the place out. So there's a hard drive with 2 or 3 movies in an alligator's stomach somewhere in Baton Rouge or Louisiana somewhere.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I was wondering, obviously you did not quit, but for me, if I'm putting that much time into all of these films and all of that work, was there a moment for you where it was like, okay, the burden of finishing those projects is gone now, so I can walk away from this? Or how long did you let yourself kind of mourn those things before, like you said, you just move on?
Well, the main thing that was annoying about it was that at the time I had a problem with not wanting to present the thing until it was 100% finished. So for a year, I had been telling my manager, I'm working on this documentary. I can't wait to show you. And it started to become this point of contention a little bit. It was sort of like becoming like why aren't you showing this thing? And it was 3 days away from being finished. And so that was the main frustrating part. When you quit hockey after 18 years, right before it sort of all takes off, when you pick the plan, it's not a plan B, but when you deviate that dramatically, you just sort of, it's like you can't change again. So it just sort of became that's like you said, you just sort of kind of have to brush it off, and you doing the victim thing or why woe is me or anything like that just burns your own time. It doesn't, nobody really cares. They'll feel bad that it happened for you, but it's like you're just burning your own time. So, and also in rap, working with a label, there's 8 artists that'll smoke a joint and then decide that they have this project that they're working on. They need an album cover and a t-shirt design and this and that. So there's not, that's constantly happening. So there wasn't a lot of free time to sort of even sit around and do woe is me. It was a lot of 20-hour, 7-day-a-week things
Wow.
for the 2010s to 2020s.
Wow.
Jeez.
Wow.
So it was just like back to work or just continue work pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we were on tour, so all we knew was that the house got ripped off, and then when we got home, we saw everything that had happened. So I got into my room, and I was just like, "Oh, for sure, there's nothing here." So but you've got a brand new tour full of stuff. But the problem was with it was this documentary, specifically with Jet Life, that I was working on. Currency, when I first worked with him at the Rock the Bells thing, he jumped off stage and broke his ankle.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I'd ever worked with him. And we were supposed to shoot all these videos, and he was supposed to go on a 60-day tour with Method Man and all these things. And I had that footage of him breaking his ankle and doing all these things, and ended up going on tour with them. And I was sitting beside him in the back, documenting 60 days of him living in hell with this cast and going on stage. And it was I kept describing it. It was like hip hop Magnolia. Like every artist had their own little drama, but everybody was coming together as a family to try to like look after, Currency, who was going through this massive thing. And it wasn't a hip hop documentary. I was just very, very proud of it. So that, like I said, that was almost done. So when we got home and that had gone, and just script ideas that I've had my whole life and all these things. And of course, people say, "Why didn't you back it up?" Well, there's little hard drives here and there, and you just sort of have one that you're working on, and it's my manager's house isn't necessarily a smart idea. It's just not a place that most people would target to go after. It was a very bold move for this person. So again, of course, lesson learned. But when you're on tour, it's hard enough just to get everything on one hard drive. There's no time to back up. And people would say, "Why don't you upload it to the cloud?" It's like, you can't upload 60 gigs in 2012 of 4K footage to the cloud on a tour bus.
Right.
It doesn't work. So anyways, like you said, you just once we got back and saw all that, it's you have a new hard drive full of new tours and new music videos that have to get done, you're behind on, and all these other things. So it is what it is. It was just disappointing that, now then it was a big joke. "Oh, you're working on a documentary? Ha ha ha." Anytime that,
Yeah. Well, you know what? Crazy things have happened in the history of Hollywood, man. Maybe one day, 10 years down the road, somebody will stumble upon some footage on a hard drive. You never know.
It'd be nice.
That's true.
It'd certainly be nice.
So I don't know if this is fully accurate, and I wanted to ask you about this. With Currency and Jet Life Recordings, I saw somewhere that it said you responded to a tweet in order to get the initial job with them.
Yeah.
That's true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Almost everything that's happened in the early stage of my career was just bothering somebody on Twitter, or like I said, offering my services for free. So I sort of have a wake up. At the time, I would have a wake up album, and it was I listened to his stuff, some of his earlier tapes, but this one album, Pilot Talk 1, for whatever reason, was sort of my wake up album. And so you wake up in the morning and you have whatever amount of energy. The coffee hits you a certain way, and you're like, "I'm going to bother this person today."
Got it.
So I just sent a message and said I wanted to do a video. And of course, you don't know how Twitter works and verified. So you're just sending a tweet into the scatterverse of all these, bots and fake people and people trying to spam him mixtapes. You don't know that there's no way for him to see it.
Right.
And then he did a tweet that just said, who can shoot with the Canon 7D and is hella fast with editing or something like that. And I'm like, I'm hella fast with editing. Wow. So I hit him back a couple times, and again, not knowing how Twitter would not show him any of those things, I guess he was getting annoyed and wrote like, "If y'all want to, actually talk to me, hit Musa, my manager." So I emailed him and sent him a music video. I just won a music video of the year in Canada for Sarah Slean's song "The Rose." Which is a video that has an interpretive dancer lady before Kanye did it. So I was very self-conscious about it. It's a very artsy video that has nothing to do with hip hop. The song is very adult contemporary-ish. So I was
Sure.
like sending him the video. I'm like, don't worry, I can do hip hop videos, bro.
Yeah.
And he must have just clicked it for 2 seconds. But anyways, it was just very interesting marketing hip hop with this video with rose petals falling and his very flowery song. So that was it. So Musa messaged me back and said he must have looked at my site or something. I had a lot of time at the time to design things for my website that had like 2 credits on it. But I'll be damned if it didn't have 500 pages on it with every detail of everything all listed out to make it look like something was really happening.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So he eventually just said, come down to LA and we'll shoot lifestyle videos. And I didn't know what that meant. And I was like, so what song? Like thinking that I was just pretending like, like just driving through and like, no, I want to make a music video. So I just every time he said lifestyle, like, cool, just let me know the song and I'll come up with a treatment. So anyways, I didn't have any money at the time. And he said, come down to LA. Rap works on a 24-hour cycle. There's PST, CST, EST, and RST, which is rap standard time.
Wow.
Where it's just whatever they come up with, you're expected to jump and have it ready to go. So he said, can you get down to LA? And I said, of course I can, because you say yes first and figure it out later.
Yeah.
So I had enough money for a few tanks of gas and a hamburger and drove down there and he broke his ankle and I got whisked off to a hospital and I was just sitting in a parking lot in the middle of the night going, wow, things aren't going well for anybody, are they?
Wow.
It's been a rough go. And then it just sort of like had a little epiphany of like, I didn't know this guy. So there was a little woe is me at that point because I just was sitting in a parking lot with no lights. And I was just like, wow, I'm the only person that has this footage of this guy have like the worst day of his life. I'm sure he'll love to know that I have that. So I just kept texting Musa, just saying like, where are you guys? And he's dealing with his star, broken leg and all this in a hospital in the middle of nowhere. And he eventually just said, I'm at this parking lot. So I drove to where he was and just sat with him from whatever time, 10 o'clock till 4 a.m. with my camera in my lap. And he's just talking to other people on the cell phone and sometimes talking to me because I'm just a guy. But when you're trapped in a truck and everything's going to crap, you have a lot of time to tell each other your ambitions and goals and things in life. And so we bonded very quickly. And a couple months later, I was at Mardi Gras, terrified of everything that was happening.
Did you eventually find this lifestyle invigorating?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It changed my DNA. I say all the time, it was director boot camp. I'm Canadian and asking people to do stuff on a set before working in rap, I would feel very apologetic and sometimes just not even ask because I didn't want to bother anybody. And working and living in New Orleans East and working in hip hop, and it wears off the smooth edges of your Canadian upbringing, and it helps. It gives you the correct amount of assertiveness that you need to not get doormatted in life. It was very useful time. I'm very thankful for it. And also, when you go on tour in the hip hop world, there's 60 days, obviously, or 30 days. One thing you find out is that you shoot until 2 a.m. in Pittsburgh somewhere, and then they do the show, and then you get through the masses and do the meet and greet and get on the bus. That's 2 a.m, but they want the video from Pittsburgh up on YouTube by 9 a.m. So you're shooting all day and then everybody's up and having fun on the bus and you're trying to edit and people are kicking out the heart, but you have to also be filming for, Philadelphia's, day 2, you have to be filming that while you're editing that. And then the show's happening. So it's just this 30-day boot camp of 24-hour film school. And it definitely teaches you how to, I used to take a week to edit a music video, and now it can be a couple hours. There's tricks that I've learned to speed the process along that gets the same result ultimately. And I wouldn't have traded. There was a lot of crazy stuff that happened, but I wouldn't have. I still do it. So there's. I'm a glutton for punishment that that ultimately helps out. Like I said, every Bowser you defeat, you become a bigger Mario or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you're filming these and you're editing them, and so you're learning what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. And then when you're making these documentaries, like we already mentioned, you're doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Generally, people don't have like 5 to 8 credits for the same film, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just it comes down to, so far in my experience, and this isn't how this is for everybody, but we sort of have a saying that every person you bring onto a project adds a month or 2 weeks,
wow.
depending on how long the project is. So it's just a
Wow.
thing of like, I know how to sound mix, so I know how hard I'm going to work. So if like, I know how long it takes to do a sound mix of something, even if it's 2 hours or whatever. So if I pass it off to somebody and then I'm paying them, and then it takes a month and a half, and it's, oh man, it's really tough, and it's very difficult when you know the job to have people sort of be wishy-washy or just not work at even a reasonable pace. So it's not a controlling thing whatsoever. It's just like, I need these things when they need to get done on a certain timeline, and I don't have the budgets to be an unreasonable person. So I have to put myself and Mallory through that.
Yeah, man, CJ Wallace, you're like my hero. Like everything you're saying,
don't you feel like you're at church right now? I do.
feel, yeah, like
It's
like, I agree 100. Like it is tough when you don't want to come off as like controlling, but you can do it, you know? And
right.
Yeah, wow, it's pretty.
And that's the thing. I mean, there's a few in my first 3 movies. There's a little bit of, maybe every once in a while, the budget lacking shows through because we had 30 minutes to shoot here and that. I mean, every project goes through that. Wah. But it's just I can't stress this enough for people, and they roll their eyes, but it's just, people don't want to put in the work. If you start, even no matter how much money you have, if you want to be a filmmaker, if your best friend has a restaurant, you write a script about a restaurant and you shoot from 1 a.m. till 6 a.m. and get it done. It doesn't matter if it sucks. It doesn't matter if it has rough edges. Shoot it and get it done. You can show it to somebody with the next script idea you have, and you can get a little bit more than you got last time. And you start with a pencil and you trade yourself up, and pretty soon you have a car. And pretty soon you have the crew. And it's like, we have 4 documentaries right now that are about to be finished. And they were all made over the last 4 years and during lockdowns and these things. But once those sell, our next projects, we're going to have a bit bigger and more flush things where I'll be able to have 4 or 5 people on it, or, you know, and even that is ridiculous. But those 4 or 5 people are going to feel like I have 100. And whenever we get $1 million for a budget, it's going to feel like 40 million, because we've done it for, you know, thousands before, or free, or, you know, for tens of thousands. So it's like I said, it's just must be the nerd syndrome of, if you don't throw the party, you're not going to get invited. There's no studios. You know, you see this all the time on Facebook, and people like, I finally finished my script, 2 years. Now I just need to find the producer and the studio and the money and it's very frustrating. I just want to tell those people, just go film that with your phone or something. Just go make it. You're going to learn. It's so much better than film school in a lot of ways. It's just so valuable to just make stuff and just start going. Life's too short, and frankly, a lot of times you don't want to work with the studio. It's just, there's so many cooks in the kitchen and things that you just don't foresee until you're already cooked. You don't realize you're in the quicksand until it's up to your neck sometimes. So I can't stress it enough for people to just, if you have some idea or some friend or whatever. Like my first movie, all I had was that I worked in hip hop, so I could throw Wiz Khalifa into the soundtrack and Lil Wayne and all these people that, like, you know, Fast and the Furious try to get. So we have this little tiny movie, but with a soundtrack that's you know, pretty big. So then you can, as a marketing guy, you can use that to get to your next thing. And I just can't stress it enough. Whatever unique thing that you have, if you want to start doing this, just take that unique thing and blow it up and make, you know, take the Kevin Smith model. You work at a clerk thing, go make a clerk
Right.
thing.
Right.
Even if it's black and white and you're just cursing and talking about dicks the whole time, just go make it. You can
Right.
say, he says that all the time, Kevin Smith. That's one of his favorite lines. If you think I'm an asshole, then that means you can do it too. If you think you're smarter than me, then use me as a dartboard. It's like, okay,
Right.
cool, I will.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I love
So-
that Robert Rodriguez line where he's like, if you don't have a helicopter, don't write a scene with a helicopter.
absolutely. And that's the thing. Absolutely. That's used. That's nobody. And that's the thing with editing too. It's like nobody has to see it until it doesn't suck anymore. You can
Yeah.
sit there and edit it until the mistakes are gone. No one has to see it.
Right.
Same with the script. Like you said, you don't have to write. And I'm never going to write a script like War and Peace by Bondarchuk with 10,000 army people running in a spiral, because I can't do that. It's just not work. You can get yourself out of so much trouble if you just write smart and use what you have to your advantage. You don't need $1 million. You half the time you can get away with 10,000.
Yeah. So along that line of like using what you have, I do want to ask you about Perfect Bid and Ted Slauson. Like, how did you connect with Ted?
Same as Currency. I bothered him on social media.
Wow.
My dear friend Jeff Zablotny sent me an article from the Esquire magazine while I was working at a company that makes machines that fold cardboard boxes really quickly for companies. And I was making instructional videos for them at the time. And he sent me an article, and he's just like, oh man, look at this. Because we just had a thing for Bob Barker. It just Price is Right, like everybody else. It's just this wonderful little warm bath thing that everybody loves. And it was the famous article with Terry with the big picture looking goofy with the big green cooker egg thing. And that's not an editorial comment. He's making a wacky, goofy face.
Yeah.
And the entire article was about this guy, Terry Neese, with the perfect bid. And I was like, oh, wow, that is pretty crazy. And then at the very bottom, it said, but there was another guy in the crowd. Ted Slauson was a math teacher and it ddid that thing like, continued on page 368. And you have to flip through all the perfume and everything to find the thing. And then there was a story about Ted, and it was only a handful of paragraphs, but my amateur detective skills, spider sense, just sort of told me the way that the one guy was talking versus the other. It just seemed to me like there was something happening. So I reached out to Ted and on Facebook actually, and he got back to me. Fun fact for filmmakers: if you reach out to people and say you want to make a movie about them, they often say yes. Go figure, huh? So that was the case. That was in 2009, I believe, and we eventually got around to it in 2017. Or 16. There was a lot of, I didn't forget about you. I promise we're making this year's.
Sure.
We got there.
Wow. Yeah. Ted seems like a really cool, like Michelle and I, when we did the episode, we were like, this dude just seems, creating his own video game and
down to earth. We wanted to know more about his show, his little talk show he had with his coworker.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right. We wanted more of that. We want to know more about Ted. We're so fascinated with Ted.
Yeah.
Outside of this, yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely born for this. That I think we have. I might have that one full show, but that's the only thing that exists. But he's so natural on there, and that co-host lady of his, it was definitely a little more timid.
Yeah.
One of the issues with Perfect Bid is I was not aware of fair use editing and how that whole thing goes.
Sure.
So we were involved with Fremantle, and that's what ended up with a lot of the drama you probably want to ask about. But when you speak to Ted, Ted is a fair use editor's dream because he knows everything. That he sat down. How I like to do the interviews is instead of sitting there with somebody for 10 hours and plowing it through and wearing them out, I like to do 3 days with an hour each. And then there's a logical spot where I can either feel them getting worn out, or they just sort of like, there's like a ta-da moment that we're like, all right, let's all go home. We're happy at this point.
Wow.
But Ted can sit there, and he just sat down and he's just sort of looked around unassuming as you see him on there. He's no different on, and he just went, all right. And episode 1, this person bid this and they did this and they were wearing this shirt.
Wow.
And he can itemize without any notes, without anything. And within he's like a radio guy. He could like get in and out in 15 seconds with these little sound bites. And he remembers every price. He remembers every person. Every funny little eye twitch that Bob gave him that made him neurotic for a month, anything that happened. And he had all the shows on DVD as well. He sent me a care package. It's incredible.
Oh my.
He sent an envelope that had like 15 DVDs and a book that was probably a centimeter thick of like handwritten
amazing
breakdowns of every episode and what he remembered. We're planning to take that and like put it into a book. It was supposed to go into like the Blu-ray thing, like back when physical media had cool books in it.
Yes.
But our distributor at the time is like the most bare bones DVD. And you're lucky to get a DVD at this point, or Blu-ray. So we're probably going to do something with that. We have some plans for a follow-up Perfect Bid thing. There's been some developments, so this story is certainly not over yet.
That's very exciting.
It's so exciting. Wow.
So yeah, if you were to get Ted on the show, and I'm happy to put you in touch with him, you will get if you say what was it like when you met Susan, he will go and you'll be like, oh, this is a documentary, because he's not even robotic or doing it in some like rehearsed way. It's just these are the facts. I'm a math guy. There's no black and white. This is just what it is. And he'll just tell you from beginning to the end of the episode, and you got to jump in or just let him go and go like, wow, that was, yeah.
I think Michelle and I would both love to just let him go.
We would. I just want to be in the presence of Ted and hear Ted speak about.
We'll make that happen for sure. Yeah.
Sure.
He's got a whole nother perspective of stuff that, like I said, it's. We're doing a follow-up sort of thing with the movie / director's cut thing, and so there's a lot of stuff that will be brought forward now that we couldn't talk about before, that Ted likes to. He can allude to a few of those things for you.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. That's very exciting. I know you had a lot of history with Ted prior to filming. As a documentarian, as a person who cares about Ted, are you balancing your relationship with him in telling the story? Was there ever a time where you had to really step aside as the person who knows Ted and, put on your documentarian hat?
No, not really. And we did talk for maybe 9 years or whatever the math worked out to on Instagram, but on Facebook, but it wasn't. We weren't like chatting about our day or getting to know each other. I'm sort of always doing 3 or 4 things at once. So I'll remember like, oh crap, I'm going to work on, I think we're going to shoot in a month. So I'll kind of just pop on and give little updates to people and vanish. It's probably really annoying. So I just kind of kept doing that. Like, I'm on a tour bus for 2 months. As soon as I get off and edit these 15 videos and do this and then we're going to shoot. So I knew him, but I didn't really know anything about him. And I kind of like that. Even with Jim McMahon with the documentary, obviously I know his career a little bit, but I didn't spend time doing Wikipedia. I kind of did the Larry King thing to a certain degree of like knowing a vague amount. And then as he's saying things, inquisitively push him farther. And then if I miss something the next day, I can sort of go back and double up. So Ted told me his story, and that was the first time I had met him and the first time we had really ever properly spoke. And he showed up at the hotel, and I had already had stuff set up to film. So he sat in and I adjusted the light, and it was, Mallory is very good at doing the talking to people and keeping everybody light on set while I'm panicking and adjusting things and doing all that sort of stuff. They probably got a little bit caught up, but until we said action, I didn't really know much about him. So he told me the story. I reached out to Terry at the exact same time on Facebook in August of 2016 and offered to fly him and his wife out to film, and he ignored it. So that was a red flag. But fully while I'm editing, I just show what's there. all I had. Terry wouldn't sit down with an interview. So the only interview that I had with him was this Vegas radio station thing that he did that you hear in the movie. That was the only thing that I had. So I had what Ted was saying happened. I had the footage, and I had what Terry said happened. So I edited it. There's no angle. It's here's what this guy said. Here's what it is. And obviously for 45 minutes before we got to the he said part, I'm showing very clearly how Ted multiple times slowly progressed and got bigger and bigger and achieved more and more and more in the show. So, I mean, if that's biased, for sure. But if Terry would have sat down and interviewed, there would have been a segment about how he said that he did all this training and flash games with his wife with the prizes. We would have, if he would have told me about that, I would have had to animate it because there's no footage of it. But that would have been represented. But that didn't happen. So yeah, it's we're doing a documentary on Kevin Trudeau right now, who's an infomercial guy who got himself in some trouble with the federal government and got locked away for 10 years. And he's got a thing called Global Information Network that these people come to. It's not Tony Robbins-y, but it's very uplift yourself and business training and things like that. And he's a very polarizing figure. And it's the same situation. I know him. I filmed with him. I don't necessarily have an opinion either way on whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. I've only had my experience with him and what he said to me on camera. And you put that up on the platter and you show what the world said about that situation. And people are going to, whatever preconception they have, they're going to have regardless. So, as that relates to Ted, I just, he said what he said. He's a robot. He had all his facts lined up, and anything I'd ever read from Terry, every answer was always different. And you don't have to be a JCS criminal YouTube subscriber guy to be able to break down that interrogation.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of that. Anything with Drew Carey, the show didn't necessarily want us to show anything bad, and we didn't really have anything bad about him. There was, I guess, a few things that after you watch Bob Barker for 45 minutes and then see Drew Carey, there's certainly a personality change and energy shift. Like I said, I have no opinion of Drew Carey other than I don't necessarily like the show and the look of it as it is currently. That was about my only opinion. But he was on that Kevin Pollak show. And if you watch the entire thing, he was saying that, he had no interest in being on a game show. And all he wanted to do was take pictures of the Seattle soccer team. And the Price is Right people kept begging him, begging him, and begging him. And then he said, finally, one day my agent called me and said, here's your soccer team. So I said, fuck it. And I took it. And I was like, man, that's... And then, the piece of the interview that's in there, he's very F-bomby and I took a lot of crap for that. And people emailed like families and said, this was a family movie. And then all of a sudden you got disgusting. And I was like, well, that's sort of how you're supposed to feel. That's what a movie's supposed to do. Yes, I put them in there, but they were said, like I couldn't cut around them. Maybe I could beep them for sure, but also that's inserting myself into the movie. These are the words he said about getting the job and the footage that I was allowed to use by Kevin Pollak. So that really frustrated a lot of people, but that's sort of our way of getting around the censorship of like, this is the spirit of the show now. Unfortunately, it's coming from a place of a product, whereas before it was a family. And, the set was these warm oranges and greens and browns and maroon colors and Bob's in silver hair and suit. And it's just a totally different vibe. I'm not an old guy necessarily, but I certainly miss... I was born in the wrong era. I love that time of television and film. Things are very bleak at the moment. And it's very disheartening as a person that makes this to be pitching content. So, like you said, you grow up on Kubrick and you see these people making these collections of work and the detail and all this thought that goes into the onion of these layers and things that people put into it. And that's what you grow up and your work ethic. And I certainly wouldn't change it, but it's just, we don't live in a audience of detail and at the moment. And there's just so many different ways to watch things, and everything's so fractional that it just sort of devalued everything. And that's very crappy.
Yeah. How do you go about choosing the stories you're going to tell? Is it what you think will be attractive to an audience, or you're doing this because you find it interesting?
Yeah, the first thing always comes from whether it triggers some selfish thing in me. And
Yeah.
then immediately I have to go, well, this is, if you commit 2 years of something and you're self-producing it with your own money, then you need to make sure that you're going to make that money back. It becomes,
Right.
you also
Right.
have to, so like the Stu Show documentary that we made after Perfect Bid, that's my
Yes.
friend Stu. So it's like we went on his show with Roger and talked about Perfect Bid. He's got a show called The Stu Show, where he has all these classic TV people on. So Roger and me went on to talk about Bob Barker and all these things. And he's like, "Oh, you got to hear my story. You got to hear my story." And he told me about it. And I'm like, "Wow, that's powerful." And then he told me eventually that he was Lucille Ball's assistant and her like a little whipping boy, basically. So as much as I love Stu, and it's like, okay, well, there's the hook, because you need to find the thing that brings everybody into it. And he's like, "I don't want anything to do with Lucy. I've been talking about that for 30 years. And I'm like, "I know, Stu, but you have to, you have to make people care about you through something. I can't just throw you up there screaming about the medical system and have people give a damn about it. They have to watch you look after Lucy and go through her death, and watch you lose this woman that's important to you, meet a new woman, and then she gets sick. You need to, it's important, Stu." So it's the same thing. It's like we're making a documentary about Tecmo Bowl. I love video games. I love the documentary King of Kong. Perfect Bid was obviously my response to, like, I want to make a King of Kong type movie. Billy Mitchell is also in Fiddling Horse, another guilty pleasure.
I have a question for you about that later. Yes.
So, anyways, I'm wrapping that up. Anyways, it's just they're all the same thing. It's like, does it hit the Spidey sense of something that's selfish? Because that's sort of what tends to, like, I love Price is Right, so that hit the spider sense. And Perfect Bid, everybody, and their sick grandma stayed home from school, the same. You wouldn't. I've toured 100 different theaters with this thing, and there's only 3 different stories about how people discover the Price is Right. They're all exactly the same. So it's that thing. It's like you love Ted, but everyone loves The Perfect Bid. So your Price is Right. We love Stu, but everyone loves Lucille Ball. So we have a thing. Everyone loves it. The 85 Bears, Jim McMahon. So we're okay. So it's that sort of thing. You have to love it first, and then you have to make sure that a big enough chunk of the world, or the niche world, will find it interesting, that you can hopefully get it out and around.
Yeah, and I think it's done so well in Perfect Bid, because you hear Price is Right, and like you said, there's very few types of interactions with that show. I don't know that I've ever heard a person say, "I don't like The Price is Right." So, all right, you see this documentary about Price is Right, and I had this like in the back burner to watch for so long. So when we did documentaries last month, and Michelle was like, "This is my pick," I was like, "Oh, sick," because I've been meaning to watch it, and this is a perfect time to do it. And so you go into it thinking it's a Price is Right thing, and then you fall in love with Ted because he's just so interesting. And without the Price is Right, is Ted still interesting? Yes, but that's the entry point to getting to know this person.
Absolutely. And that was part of the thing too, is like, I wanted to make it, same with the Kevin Trudeau documentary. I was always wanting to make narrative films first. And then that idea was, I'm going to write a script called Breaking the Bank, about a guy that's like Ted, that memorizes a show and then does all this stuff. And it's like, I realized very quickly that you need the power of the show and the history of the show. It doesn't matter if some fake guy beats a game that I invented. No, like that's not in any way. I mean, it hasn't been done as a movie script before, so that's, I guess, your hook. But to have him go on and have Bob Barker be the person, and all these, Kathy Greco and Roger Dobkowitz and all these people embracing you, and you're actually affecting this institution of a show that everybody knows and loves. Like that's once in a lifetime. That's what obviously elevates it to unbelievable status. And so it has to be a documentary. Same with Kevin Trudeau. I had a script called Frank Flood, which tells his life story and all the aspects of what I found interesting about him. But him going up against the actual government and actually doing all these things is so far beyond that it has to be a documentary. So you don't want to fake Ted. Ted is one of a kind. You want to put him up there as much as humanly possible.
Yeah. A lot of great documentaries. We also did American Movie, and the characters in that, you just like, I could watch this person for like 8 hours.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's the same as, like, I'm not a big Boondock Saints fan, but one of my favorite documentaries is Overboard, about the making of the director, like losing his mind, him, getting all this stuff, and then he just manages to mess it all up. That I could watch it. That could have been a 14-hour movie. That's I get off on all that stuff. That's same with King of Kong. Billy Mitchell is. I mean, if in the first 30 seconds of King of Kong you're not hooked, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely.
Terry Neese actually for 10 years, from when the article dropped until when Perfect Bid dropped, he kept talking and posting on his Facebook about that his life rights had been bought by a director at a company, and it turned out that the director was Seth Gordon, who is the director of King of Kong.
Sure.
So we put out the documentary, and then that movie unfortunately went away for Terry. But it was just a very bizarre connection that Seth was hitching his wagon to him, and
right.
But Terry claimed that he would go on his Facebook after the movie came out, and he got a little bit of flack for it for a while, and then once it hit Netflix, it was unfortunately his Facebook sort of got overran. But one of the bits of our follow-up, he spent a lot of time claiming that he didn't know the movie was out and what it was about, but he sent us a email in September of 2017, right when it was about to come out, with an email with a subject that said cautionary notice. And he told me that he was a public figure and I couldn't use his likeness. And I was signing myself up for a lawsuit because he had this movie, and on and on and on. And then he claimed for a very long time that he knew nothing about the movie, and he had heard that it was a Drew Carey puff piece and all these things. I'm like, oh my God, it never ends with this man. But just to say that Perfect Bid was definitely fueled by my love of King of Kong. And it was very, once I got into that world and found out Terry had a movie, and that Seth was doing it for Terry, it was I was like, I wanted to save him.
That's such a wow.
It's just karma. You can't do these things in life. There's just you don't want to sound like a stoner hippie or anything, but at the end of the day, like, these things sort of have a way of correcting themselves.
Sure.
So it's just not worth. It's not worth whatever you think you're going to get by any micro or giant lie. It's just never worth what you're going to get on the back end of it, unfortunately.
Documentary justice.
Yeah, right.
When we were going through the different films, we did Perfect Bid first, and then our patrons vote for one movie a month, and they voted King of Kong. And so it's something that I had seen before. Love it. One of my favorite movies ever. And in looking up just different, people who are in it and facts about it, I'm on Billy Mitchell's Letterboxd page, maybe, or IMDb page, I'm not sure. And I'm going through his credits, and then I see CJ Wallace. And this is days after we had spent an hour talking about you.
Oh, no.
And my head, like, almost exploded. Like, I couldn't believe. And Michelle and I, we find a lot of little coincidences. I guess.
See connections.
Yeah,
we make big deals out of connections
all the time. Like, for example, right now we're covering the films of Jim Carrey. Every single one that we've covered so far, Jim almost lost the role to Nicolas Cage.
Right.
Just 3 random movies. But anyway, so CJ Wallace, I'm like, what is going on here? So then I go down the Fiddling Horse, and I see that it's streaming on Tubi. So I'm like, Billy Mitchell is in a movie. So
Yeah.
I was just as happy about it.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, like, how did that kind of come about, and like, how was that?
It's the same thing. It's you see somebody on Twitter, and I enjoy if I find you interesting, there's a good chance you have a DM from me and you're like not following this person folder. If you go check, there's a good chance that I've bothered you. It was something like, like a follow-up documentary or just something. I'll come up with some idea that, like, it's not fake. But I'll like, oh, maybe we could film the Pac-Man documentary or something, some random thing. But then, as Fiddling Horse started to put itself together, I was writing it, and I needed a celebrity, like horse trainer guy that's just sort of larger than life, but a little bit an interesting character.
Sure. Yeah.
We made that movie for $60,000, and we have a very, a pretty sizable cast of people that, while it's not Tom Cruise for sure, they're all people that, like a decent amount. It's the same as a documentary. You want to, every single cast member you want to try to find that has some amount of an audience that you can kind of build together a core. When you're writing a movie called a role for a guy named Colt Reynolds, I mean, who else are you going to get?
How was working with him?
It was great. He came out for one day, and we were shooting, I don't even know the name of the town, but it's 2 hours north of Zachary, Louisiana, which is already, you're not going to find it. So we're just in the middle of nowhere, and the truck pulls up, and I can see just the silhouette, like in the, like the window, it's sort of tinted. I can just see that very specific silhouette. I was like, oh, it's happening.
Oh my God.
The president is here. And so we were filming and doing this other stuff. And I guess he didn't realize that the scene needed to be outside. And so we needed to find a new location to shoot at in the middle of nowhere. So we ended up panicking and finding a new spot. And it actually turned out the barn that we found, with, like, imagine trying to find a film location in the middle of nowhere within a day. And the place we found was actually where they shot part of Seabiscuit. So, like I said, every circus.
Wow.
We're good enough acquaintances and friends and all that. We just had a little diva moment and confusion at the beginning, but because his hair is very specific, so it can't be seen blowing in the wind, I suppose. I don't really know. We didn't get into it. There's a lot of fires when there's like two people on a set that are trying to make a movie. It's just like, okay, we're not outside. Okay, we'll figure it out.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean,
it's a great location.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So he's fantastic. What have we done since? I made like a little animated thing. He's got something he's about to do soon. So he asked me to make a little like opening credit animated thing. So I made like a little Donkey Kong Billy Mitchell TV show thing for him. I don't know when that's coming out, but he just texts me maybe every 3 or 4 months with just some random thing. But he, despite how the movie The King of Kong shows him, he's a sweetheart.
Sure.
If we're in Florida, he'll let us come to his restaurant and we eat, and he'll open up some arcade and we'll end up playing games for a bit.
Nice.
Wow.
We were playing. I was just like playing Tetris, and he came in over my shoulder and was watching me play. And then like after a second, he shouldered me over and he said, "Scoot over, we're playing." And then we had a versus game, and I'm like, what is even happening right now? Like, you can make millions in film, but like, those are the moments that matter.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I whooped his ass, and he looked over and he winked and he said, "Don't tell anybody." And I promised I wouldn't.
And it was all worth it. This was the moment. This was the moment. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, you just described like the most magical thing I could possibly ever imagine.
Right.
Definitely. And he's in some trouble with the gate he's still in a bit of trouble with his scores and people doing some stuff. And again, it's like I play Tecmo Bowl with some people that are the best in the world at it, and we have our little side of the world, and they're doing all their stuff. I don't spend a lot of time with the day to day. So if he bullshitted those scores, that sucks. All I know is that his chicken wings are good, and he gives us hot. He showed up to the Fiddling Horse set with his hot sauces. He had two
Wow.
cases, and they had custom made Fiddling Horse.
No
Thank you for
way.
having me, Billy Mitchell
Oh
labels
my
on
g
them. Yeah, I can't believe
Wow.
I've forgotten about those until right this second. They're in a cabinet at Mallory's mom's house.
Amazing.
Yeah. So again, it's like if that's what movie making is. It's like it's cool to go to festivals and have these red carpet things maybe once every 2 years or something, and that's what everybody sees. But it's like, just being in Florida and being able to go play video games with Billy Mitchell is ridiculous. It's just that's what you get into this business for. And if it isn't, if you're trying to climb to some Mount Everest where there's a flag, there's no flag and there's no mountain. There's only you're doing it in or you're not alive. That's it.
Yeah, these human experiences, this is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, CJ Wallace, I can tell you with 100% certainty that this has been maybe the best day of Michelle's life ever.
Yes. This was great. Thank you so
This was
much.
such a great conversation. We really appreciate you taking your time. And
Yeah.
like Michelle said, I feel like this was great education in filmmaking here,
Yeah.
philosophy and practicality. It's amazing.
Awesome. Anytime. Anytime you want to keep going, we can ramble. It's always, like I said, it's always good to escape editing. So,
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you if you're able to tell us what you got coming up next. What are you working on?
yeah, we've got the Jim McMahon documentary coming out called Mad Mac: The Memory of Jim McMahon. He is he was like the original sort of like cartoon character NFL player. Now that's sort of the norm, and if you're not that, you don't get paid attention to. But he's definitely one of the pioneers of branding and making yourself bigger than the football field. And he's had a lot of trouble post NFL, so we tell his story. That's should be out around kickoff this year, hopefully.
Nice.
Certainly before the Super Bowl. Our King of Kong movie called the Tecmo Bowl, which is about the best Tecmo Bowl players in the world. That's, again, you ask these movies, there's the Tecmo Bowl and Bo Jackson on the internet is one of the original memes of the internet. So
sure.
Anytime we post about Tecmo Bowl, the internet blows up for us. So there's this very emotional sort of unexpected story about these three friends from Omaha who also happen to be three of the best players in the world at this game.
Wow.
So it's sort of King of Kong-y, but it's a little more, I like Lars von Trier movies and Paul Thomas Anderson type stuff. So there's a little bit of salt in their wounds that you have to earn when you watch some of our stuff. You have to watch a sad Bob Barker sequence at some point, but you get the rest of the, Ted being fun for the other 70 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's that, and the Kevin Trudeau movie, and we actually just are about to do a movie that we're half done on a guy named Tim Colaseri, who was in the movie Full Metal Jacket. He's the guy in the helicopter that screams, "Get some, get some."
Yeah.
He was supposed to have the Lee Ermey role, the famous main guy. And every Stanley Kubrick movie that could ever be done has already been done twice. So this is one story that's a way to tell a friend of mine's tragic story while also making a Stanley Kubrick movie, a little Stanley Kubrick love letter. So it's we got that one, and a Doris Day movie that's coming out very soon. We found some secret stuff of Doris Day that's fantastic. It's nothing bad. It's the most touching, wonderful thing that nobody knows about Doris Day. And I love that era of filmmaking. So it's like I told you, I see the poster. I get to live in Technicolor movie magic time. And there's this weird little thing about Doris Day that nobody knows about that I think people are going to get a kick out of. So we got a few things coming.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. When it's just two of us during the lockdown, it's like you don't have, documentaries are 6 feet away anyways. And when you don't have 40 people around, there's only 2 or 3, it makes making films really easy. So we were lucky enough to just sort of drive around to places and catalog all these movies. But now we have a backlog. So it's been like 3 years of not putting anything out. And but now in the next 6 months, we're going to have 4 or 5 things. So,
jeez,
it's great.
And then, yeah, like I said, we got a perfect bid, couple perfect bid things still to come, and a couple surprises. So that's my Kevin Smith section of the podcast, where I just say a bunch of stuff that we're up to.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to check everything out when it comes out. We look forward to it with a great anticipation. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. This was awesome.
Thank you for having us, movie friends.
Thank you.
And there's your cut point. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. You can stream CJ's movies Perfect Bid, The Contestant Who Knew Too Much, BB, and The Fiddling Horse, all on Tubi in the United States. Keep an eye out for his avalanche of new documentaries coming out soon, and remember, no one is going to hold the door open for you. Sometimes you have to work hard for free, say yes, and one day, you just might find yourself playing Tetris with Billy Mitchell. We would love it if you would rate and review the show wherever you're listening. It really helps us out. Also, please send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com, and please consider supporting the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. We have a ton of additional episodes and series available, and you get to vote for future episodes, which is pretty cool. Thank you so much to CJ Wallace and Michelle for joining me for this interview. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Music by Anthony Vicora. If you like the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps us find new friends. Thanks!